We are gathered here to fill you with fear and give you a treat for your ears as we invade your mind with our scary rhymes and some tales that can be gory. As you bear witness and sit here and listen to our poetic horror stories.
When I was born, I was different. I never looked like a normal child. The Richardson family deemed me unfit to be gazed at by the public eye. So at first, they just kept me away from the townspeople. I played a lot inside. Playing outside wasn't really allowed. But sometimes, my mother felt bad and would let me out. But I had to wear a sack over my head. I would play mostly by myself on the Richardson estate grounds. But I was happy for a little while. That is until one day some kids snuck onto the estate and they saw me playing around by myself. I noticed them at the last second. I wanted to run inside for help. You see, I never played with any kids before. At first, they seemed friendly. Their names were Peter, John, Billy, and Troy. Just 4 little boys. We played tag and chase, kid games. I had a lot of fun, but when we were done, Billy asked, "Why are you wearing that silly sack over your head?" "Why don't you take it off?" he said. I told him no. If I do, I will get in trouble. But they were kids. They didn't understand. So, John came up behind me and snatched off my sack. When they saw my face at first, they were shocked and taken aback. Then suddenly, they started to laugh. I tried to grab the sack so I could run away, but things escalated and got out of hand. And the next thing I remember was my mother running, screaming out, "Stop!" But it was too late. All 4 boys were dead. I had beat them all savagely and bashed in their heads. You see, my grandfather was the founder of our town, Richardsonville, and they couldn't let this incident get out. They covered up the incident. My grandfather and father tied up and bound the boys' bodies with rocks and big heavy stones. My grandfather and father loaded them on a boat and tossed them in the deepest part of the Richardson Lake and sent them to their watery grave. That's when they decided to lock me away in the basement like an animal. Yes, the Richardson family was my family. And they casted me out because they were ashamed of me. But they would let me out occasionally, for certain celebrations and holidays, but only around our family that knew of me.
I thought to myself, I knew the Richardson family was keeping a deep, dark secret, and it was him. He was the missing link to the murders. What a twist. "So, you are the missing brother of Paul Richardson," I said. He chuckled under his breath as he shook his head. He said,
"No, Paul wasn't my brother. Paul Richardson was my father and Vivian was my mother. They had me at a young age, and my grandfather was not happy with this and didn't want anyone to know. But he also didn't want to give me away. He had my mother and father to marry quickly and quietly. And after that, they continued to create their family."
I was floored, but he wasn't finished. He had more, he said.
But the real problem lied with Paul and Vivian. They were sister and brother, but they fell in love and became secret lovers. My grandfather, Dick Richardson, was having an affair. When he would travel out of town, he would like to consult with women of ill repute. He would visit brothels and prostitutes. But he had a favorite. Her name was Sally. He would spend most of his money and time. He fell in love and wanted to run away with her. But in the end, they knew it wouldn't work, and they had to go their separate ways. But that's when my grandparents found out they were pregnant, and shortly after that, they had Paul. My grandfather was very happy to have a son to pass his name on. But about 14 years later, a young girl showed up at the Richardson home. Her name was Vivian, and she was Sally, my grandfather's daughter. Right after my grandfather and Sally separated, Sally discovered she was pregnant too. But Sally died shortly after giving birth. And Vivian just floated around from orphanage and family members. An unwanted little girl. And at this time, my grandfather became a very wealthy man. He inherited his father's estate, left him the home and a lot of land. She found him because Sally left a letter for Vivian to read when she became of a certain age, when she was old enough to search for him. My grandfather took Vivian in, but he hired her as a maid. He didn't want my grandmother Lily to know of his sin. But Vivian felt like she was owed more from my grandfather than just to work for him as a maid. And she knew Paul was her brother, but she slept with him anyway. My grandfather was very displeased with this situation. He didn't see this complication. So Paul and Vivian at 15 were married in a quick ceremony. Then 9 months later, I was born, a product of incest. Their karma, their acrimony.
Suddenly, it dawned on me. I never asked him his name. I asked, "What is your name?" He told me his name was Shane. I told him my name is Susie, but I prefer to be called Sue. I was so excited. I felt like a real-life Nancy Drew.
So, Sue, you came here to find out the mystery of why I killed my family on Thanksgiving Day?
I slowly nodded my head. Yes, I said. This is just a friendly reminder to please like and comment to let us know how we are doing so far. We would love to hear from you all. And if you're new, please subscribe and become a part of the PHS crew. And we thank you.
Every year they let me out to celebrate the holidays. They have always let me participate. But that year, they wouldn't let me out. No matter how I begged, pleaded, and shouted. Paul came down to the basement and told me that they were hosting a party on Thanksgiving Eve because Paul was running for mayor in our town. It was a fundraiser, so he needed me to stay down here in the basement and to not make a sound. Once the party was over, he would let me leave. Then I could take part in the Thanksgiving festivities. But unfortunately, after the party, no one came down here for me. I was so enraged. I could feel my blood race through my veins. All I could think is that they were having Thanksgiving dinner without me. They left me here, in the dark. I started to pace back and forth just thinking to myself, this isn't the first time they forgot about me, and this probably won't be the last. I had all these thoughts swirling around in my head. Meanwhile, I could hear them laughing and having a good time, like everything was fine. At that moment, I had an epiphany. This will be the last time they will get away with doing this to me. It was about 7 p.m. when Paul came down to open the basement door to let me out. If he knew how much hate I was carrying inside, he would have never let me out. I wanted the whole family to die. When I walked up into the kitchen, I could see they just placed the food on the dining room table. It was a grand spread, but I didn't care. The hatred I had in my heart only let me see red. I grabbed a hold of the big carving knife on the countertop, and I took a big swing and plunged the knife deep into Paul's neck, moving it back and forth till I cut off his head. That is when the family started to flee. They all went into different rooms trying to get away from me. But it didn't matter, because today, they will all pay for the atrocities done to me. Vivian was next. I grabbed her by the neck, then I strangled and broke her neck. Then I plunged the knife deep into her gut. I twisted and watched as her dress turned red from her blood. Then I found the twins. They were hiding with baby Maggie in the hallway closet. I knew they were just kids, but at that time it didn't matter, because to me, they were all my enemies. They all needed to die. So with the knife I cut, I sliced, and watched as the light fade out of their eyes. My grandmother Lily tried her best to stop me from killing her grandkids, but she couldn't stop me, no matter what she did. I grabbed her and threw her down on the floor, breaking her leg. She screamed out. I could tell she was in horrific pain. She screamed for my grandfather Dick to save her. But just like his name, he was a true dick, and he never came close to helping her. He stayed away, in his hiding place. I could see my grandmother's disappointment on her face when she realized she won't be saved. She just closed her eyes and she waited to die. She gave up and gave in to her demise. I made her death quick, as I slashed her throat from ear to ear. Then I started my search for my grandfather, Dick. At first he was hard to find, but I found him in his office, hiding underneath his desk. He had a surprise for me. He had broken glass surrounding his desk that cut my feet. He momentarily escaped and ran into his den, where he grabbed his hunting rifle and started to shout out commands. If I stepped 1 foot in there, he would blow off my head. So I did comply with what he asked me to do, because as a kid, I found a secret pathway behind the walls that led me to different rooms. This is how I got him. He never saw me coming. I entered the room from behind his bookshelf. But first, I cut the phone line. That way he couldn't call 911 for help. I grabbed the gun away from him, aimed it at his face, and pulled the trigger. His blood and brain matter flew across the room and covered a wall and mirror. And that was the end of the Richardson family. Now, it's just me.
When he finished, I was truly captivated. I didn't know what to say. He said,
"This is my story, and I don't feel bad for what I did. I have no regrets."
And with that, he just sat there and didn't say another word. But I could tell he was satisfied with getting this off his chest. We both just sat for a moment. Neither one of us made a move. Then suddenly Shane stood up and walked away into another room. I took this as a signal for me to leave. He let me go free. I never moved so fast in my life. I went to the police station to tell them all of what Shane told me, and I was talking a mile a minute. I know I just sounded crazy. They listened to me ramble on, and when I was done, they gave me a citation for trespassing and told me to leave. They didn't believe me. A couple of weeks later, the Richardson home caught on fire and mysteriously burnt down completely to the ground. The fire department checked through the ashes, and nothing and nobody was found. Till this day, I still wonder where Shane has gone. Now that he's no longer a prisoner in the Richardson family home.